Purusharthas, Chaturveda Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So the ultimate goal of a Hindu is to attain moksha through dharma. So ancient Indian culture, particularly Hindu culture, promotes duty-bound discharge of the human functions. Rajadharma, Pitrudharma, Matrudharma. So dharma is having different connotations. Dharma is deployed in the sense of French system. It is more than the concept of dharma. In one sense, dharma is justice. In another sense, dharma is duty. Duty and so ancient culture talked about duties. So the Western concept of natural law, natural rights, and all these promoted the right concept. You can have inner peace. So as you know, 5000 years BC or 2000 years BC, the old Stone Age, the new Stone Age, Paleolithic culture and Mesolithic culture and Mesolithic culture, and Copper Age, Iron Age. Then we have Ramayana, Mahabharata, then Vedas, early Vedic period, Rigvedic period, then later Vedic period, and all these historical evolution of human being. Then 6th century BC is an important century.
63 BC was a year in the pre-Julian Roman calendar.
6th century BC is an important century in the history of mankind. Gautama Buddha was born in India, Mahavira was born in India, Confucius was born in China, and Thales was born in Greece. These important philosophers, great human beings, changed the course of human history. So the excesses of Hinduism were addressed by Gautama Buddha. And after that we know the invasions, foreign invasions, and the Islamic culture, advent of Islamic culture, and advent of Europeans, and now the colonialism, imperialism, oligarchy, then British colonialism, and after that we had a struggle for independence. Then we got freedom and we have our own constitution, and we are celebrating 75 years constitutional functioning in the country. So in modern sense, how far these ancient values are relevant to the modern context, and now we are relevance of ancient legal thought today, ancient culture today, how we can have to understand the value of those, and how can we mold our life. So further, peace and war, and we are also talking about the relevance of Ambedkar, relevance of Karl Marx, relevance of Gandhi, particularly today. So why we are studying different ideologies for the modern context, the purpose is how far they are relevant, how far they can be helpful to solve our present day problems. So in that aspect, everybody feels that the ancient culture is today relevant to the modern problems and solutions we are all observing around the world, particularly the international arena. We know the conflicts, the war and these things, particularly the Israel Hamas conflict, which violated the gross violation of the human rights, and there was no answer for this type of violation. So, in this context, we have to appreciate the rule of law, we have to appreciate the present setup, the role of state, the role of society, the role of a human being in the society, particularly in Indian context. So we are proud to have the strength of our ancient culture, the constitutional culture which was molded by the ancient culture is functioning in an effective manner to bring social transformation or to bring the social change. So I am very happy that we have today a momentous occasion that we are entering into this, just to promote the ancient Indian knowledge system and the relevance of the ancient Indian knowledge system and how we can achieve this inner peace. Thank you for coming to. Thank you.
Along with Shankaracharya's Bhashyas and advanced Sanskrit grammar. After completing his traditional studies, Acharya Venkatesh also pursued his academic education, holding a B.Tech from Swami Vivekananda Institute of Technology, Secunderabad, and a master's degree from the University of Dayton, Ohio, USA. While still in the Gurukulam, since 2016, he began teaching Sanskrit to fellow students and from June 2020 has been a full-time teacher of Vedanta. He successfully conducted a 5-year long-term Vedanta course from 2020 to 2025 and has since commenced his second long-term batch, many of whose students have themselves begun teaching under his guidance. In addition to Vedanta, Acharya Venkatesh has been teaching the Dharshana's 6 systems of Indian philosophy for Sringeri Sharda Peetham, Aham Brahmasmi Foundation. Known for his clarity, fearlessness and adherence to scriptural truth, he continues to challenge dogma, sectarian distortions and modern misrepresentations of Sanatana Dharma. Apart from his scholarship in Vedanta and Sanskrit, he is also a proficient Nadi astrologer and Vastu Shastra expert, integrating traditional wisdom with contemporary understanding. I now would like to invite our chief guest to address the audience.
Here we see that apart from the Purva Mimamsa and Uttar Mimamsa, most of them kind of design their whole philosophy first and then say, we are in keeping with Vedas and we are Vedic. So this one such philosophy is the Nyaya philosophy and also Tarka. So Nyaya, Tarka are grouped kind of together with some similarities and some differences. And even Sankhya Yoga. So yoga is not the modern yoga, the Patanjali yoga which we know of today. But yoga is a different philosophy which is very rarely found nowadays. And we have very few ashrams in Haridwar who teach actual yoga philosophy. So yoga and Sankhya are mostly similar. But yoga accepts Ishvara and Sankhya doesn't. So one is a Saishvara Sankhya, other is a Nirishvara Sankhya. So here also you got an atheist, but still grouped in Astika Mata. And then Purva Mimamsa ka Uttar Mimamsa. So Purva Mimamsa, Uttar Mimamsa, as the word suggests, Purva Mimamsa, Uttar Mimamsa. What is Mimamsa? Mimamsa is thorough analysis. Thorough analysis of Purva. Purva means the before section of Vedas. So people who analyze the earlier section of Vedas are called Purva Mimamsakas. And then it's very famous. We see that in a debate between Adi Shankaracharya and a Purvamamsaka called Mandana Mishra. And Mandana Mishra's mentor, Kumari Lamanta. So these are all ancient Purvamamsakas, great Purvamamsakas. So these people analyze the Veda Purva Bhaga. So to give you context, so Veda is divided into two parts. One is the Veda Purva Bhaga and the other is Veda Anta Bhaga called Vedanta. So generally Vedanta is translated, people use many different ways of translating and saying that it's the end of knowledge or whatever. But Vedanta is a typical, position oriented name. So the position is that it comes towards the end part of Vedas, so therefore it's called Vedanta. Vedanta has another word that is Upanishad. So Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramanyam. So other word for Vedanta is Upanishads. So there is a misconception that Upanishads were written by someone, at a certain date. But Upanishads, just like Vedanta also is Apaurushaya. Apaurushaya means they are not product of an individual, like written by an individual at a certain point of time. Unlike texts like Mahabharata or Ramayana or Puranas. So all these are written by someone at some point of time, but not Vedas. So people who accept this Veda is Apaurushaya and Veda is a valid piece of knowledge, they are Astikas. Now, what does Veda talk about generally? So as Indians, so even if we follow Veda, even if we are religious or not, so to have an idea of what Veda talks about is important. And Veda talks about broadly three things: Karma, Upasana, Jnana. So karma is doing various rituals, and then Upasana is kind of visualization oriented meditation, and then Jnanam is knowledge of who am I, or what is the whole purpose of life, what is the reality of everything, am I really suffering, is suffering real? So the answer for deeper questions of life. So all this superficially may look a bit uncool for you all. So I was in your place, just a few years back, a decade back, a few years is a decade. But when you meet a right teacher, you understand the importance of what Veda is about. And definitely in today's age, science has got answer for lifestyle and for curing many diseases. But when it comes to understanding the meaning of life, how to deal with pain, how to pull ourselves up when we get hit by life, because life doesn't just go in a trajectory, just up. So you're going to hit it low, you're going to hit a high, you're going to hit a low. So how is it that I'm supposed to deal with the lows of life? So we don't have answers for this specifically. We are not taught. So this emotional education is not given in schools. And you can say psychology is one such area we can educate ourselves. But unfortunately, psychology also has its own limitation, and it's a very big business model. So it's a different topic altogether. But there's no solution as such with respect to any other system. Like when we look at the scenario of Arjuna in the battlefield, where Bhagavad Gita starts. How Bhagavad Gita starts? So Arjuna sitting in the battlefield looks at both the sides, and one side sees his own people, Pandavas, and then Pandavas include his sons, his brothers, and his brothers' children, and extended family. And the other side sees his own teacher as the head of his family, and also other relatives of his. And he just visualizes for a moment what's going to be the outcome of the war, and that is death. And not just death, death of just few people, but death in a huge number. And this takes a toll on his mental health. So you can use the word mental health here. Yeah. So Arjuna is low. So modern people will say Arjuna is depressed. So Bhagavan Krishna doesn't give him any magic pill and says, take this pill every day and forget about everything, move on. Because that doesn't work like that. Now Bhagavan Krishna brands Arjuna as you're a depressive person, or you had this episode of a depression or anything. It's important to look at this because whenever we face a low in life, we often find, this kind of TikTok videos where, TikTok like short videos where, people give you a checklist to diagnose yourself. So am I this or am I that? So it's important to see that Shastra doesn't look at anyone as a problematic individual, like you're born like that or you're having a problem. But Shastra gives us a solution, how to deal with it practically. And here we see Bhagavan Krishna teaching Arjuna 18 chapters and 700 shlokas. So when we are hit with life, by various situations of life, what we really need is a guru who can give us a knowledge of what is the reality of it. Am I really suffering? Because if suffering is real, if I'm really bound, there's no solution, then I should not be able to sleep at night. I should not be able to enjoy a joke or enjoy a meal which I like. But in spite of my suffering, my stress, my anxiety, I find myself also enjoying. So if that was real, if my stress was real, then this enjoyment, this happiness should not be possible. And if it's possible, then that's pointing out my conclusion about me being the sufferer is wrong. This is where the Gita begins. And Gita confirms the fact that your conclusion about yourself is wrong. So that's where Bhagavan Krishna starts. Ashochan and Pashochasto, etc. And then he says that you talk like a pandita, but you grieve. Your grief points out that you are confused with respect to the reality. Now, when I use the word confusion with respect to reality, this confusion with respect to everything being real, I am equally real, our view of life. So this is what a mistake we make, that I am equally real as everything. And this whole thing is really going on, I am really going to die, or I am really going to, whatever. Or people around me are going to, whatever is going to happen. So too much dwelling in the past is depression, and too much looking into the future is anxiety. So this is not a happy outcome of dwelling in the past or future. And it's not an advice also. It's not so easy that just give an advice, live in the present. It doesn't work that way. So if it worked that way, then Bhagavan Krishna also would say, just Arjuna, just live in the present, be cool, and then move on. But that's not how easy it is. So the 6 knowledge systems, now to connect that with the topic we are going to talk about, the 6 Shad Dharshana, Shad Astika Dharshana, the 6 knowledge systems who accept the validity of Veda. The common topic of all the 6 is Jiva. Jiva is the individual, me, I. And then Ishvara. Ishvara is the one who put us here. So one who places us here, making us deal with the whole thing. And then Moksha. How to be free from this? So these are the common topics which everyone talks about. And I said, among these 6, the rest, the first 4, the Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, and Yoga, they kind of tailor the whole philosophy first, and then also say, we are not going against Veda, so we accept the validity of Veda. So that's how they give a secondary importance to Veda as a praman and not a primary, because Veda is the only means of knowledge by which I can know what I am, what is this whole experience about, am I really bound, what is God? So God is a term, Bhagavan. So who is Bhagavan? Why he has given us this whole experience of life? So Veda is the only way to figure out the answer to all these questions. So ultimately, we have to resort to Veda. And I said Veda which talks about karma, upasana and jnana. So it is the jnana part which we have to resort to get answers for us. And that jnana part of Veda is called Vedanta or Upanishad. So this is a main means of knowledge which is not seen by these 4, even the 5. The Purvamamsaka also doesn't recognize Vedanta as a separate Shastra. So that's why we see that this Purvamamsa culture, which is mostly a ritual-oriented culture. So this ritual-oriented culture is so deep-rooted in India that we see that a sadhu who gives up this the eligibility to do ritual is looked down and is said, good for nothing. There's Madhu Sannyasi there in Telugu. This is how that sadhu, a dull student is addressed. Madhu, sadhu type person. But that's not how it is. So in the Bhagavad Gita introductory commentary, Adi Shankaracharya ji first establishes that Vividohi Vedokto Dharmaha Pravritti Lakshanaha Nivritti Lakshanascha. So during the time of Adi Shankaracharya, there was a rise in Bauddha Mata and people started seeing Hinduism as a completely ritual oriented religion, and there is no other escape from this doing the rituals. And then people started resorting to Buddhism, where they would outright take sannyasa and reject these rituals. So this is where Adi Shankaracharya came in and said, this is not just Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma is not just about doing rituals. So Pravritti Lakshana is not just Sanatana Dharma. So Pravritti Lakshanascha, Nivritti Lakshanascha. So even Nivritti Lakshana is Sanatana Dharma. So people who follow the Veda Purvabhaga are given to Karma and Upasana, and people who are following the Vedanta are generally they take sannyasa. So this is how we see these two types coming down in Sanatana Dharma. And then as respected Vice Chancellor spoke about the four ashramas and the four purusharthas. So here the Veda Purvabhaga, which talks about karma and upasana, is mainly for dharma, artha, kama, purushartha. Dharma, artha, kama, can be in a very light way taken as roti, kapda, makan, and then gaining something more. So fancies, fulfilling your fancies and all. So there are laukika ways to fulfill. So there are worldly ways to attain what you want, and also there are Vedic ways. So Veda also suggests how do I achieve what I want. So there is a Putra Kameshi Yaga. There's a yaga, there's a ritual talked about to gain a son, to have progeny. There's a yaga talked about to have rains, Kariri Yaga, etc. So Veda talks about this. And then Veda talks about how you gain this knowledge. So for them, what is talked about is karma and upasana. And someone who has grown out of it. Grown out of it is someone who sees that nothing really solves my problem. Like Arjuna. Arjuna doesn't see that fighting this battle and winning is going to solve my problem. Because he sees that I am going to kill my guru, I am going to kill my people, and my people are going to get killed. Now after this, even if I gain a kingdom, what good is going to be? Like, it's not going to solve my problem. So this person is technically called a Vairagi, to whom the Vedanta Shastra is addressing. So this is a whole system of Sanatana Dharma, which is ultimately committed to moksha by giving you the knowledge of Ishvara. So coming back to the discussion, so here not Artha Sangra, so Tarka Sangra. So Artha Sangra is the Purvamamsa text. So this is Tarka Sangra. So Tarka Sangraha has both Nyaya and Vaisheshika systems of philosophy written by Annam Bhatta in 17th century. So it's a foundational introductory text that synthesizes the teachings of these two closely related schools of thought into a single and accessible work. So what happened in the 17th century, these two were clubbed, and then there's a book called Tarka Sangra which was introduced to study these two philosophies. And then nowadays we have exposure to this formal education, and then you study maths and science at a very young age. I think in first class you start getting introduced to this Western logic. So Western logic and Eastern logic. So these two things, at least a take-home point for today from today's session is. So Western logic is mostly inductive. So you are trained to think in terms of possibilities. So there is a very, very healthy system of logic which we are trained, and we all follow this inductive system of logic. It's a Western system of logic. So this Nyaya and Vaisheshika is a deductive system of logic. So to give you an example, so when you see a mountain with smoke, so Parvataha Maniman, so the conclusion is this mountain is on fire. So you just saw a mountain with smoke, but the conclusion is Parvato Vandiman. So if you first deduce, you first make a conclusion. इसको हम बोलते हैं अनुमान. So अनुमान लगाना है. So first you do अनुमान. So anumana per se is not a pramana. Anumana is deduction. So it's called an inference. So an inference is not per se any means of knowledge. So I can infer 100 things. So looking at your face, I can infer you're angry with me, or you're happy with me, or you're bored, or you're not interested. So I can infer 100 things. But inference is a means of knowledge only when it is in keeping with reality. So that's what inference is. So here we see that these first two schools of this schools of thought, this Nyaya and Vaisheshika, highly depend on inference, and then the whole style is first deduce, first do a pratigna. So the whole presentation will be pratigna, and then hetu. Hetu is you back up the pratigna by pratiksha. So Parvato Vandiman is the first opening statement. The mountain is on fire. Now why? So the hetu is dhumavatva, because I see smoke. So just because you see smoke, that doesn't mean there is a fire. So here that's where they correlate and they say yatha, the example is given yatha pakashalayam. Just as in the kitchen, I see that the smoke is there because the fire is there. Therefore here I see smoke. Therefore fire must be there. And this is the logic, this is how they flow, this is how the deductive system is. And here again someone can question the very hetu itself and say it's not necessarily so that whenever you see smoke there is a fire. It's not a 100% parameter. So that's where the hetu becomes hetu abhasa, and then there's another hetu, and then you explain the hetus and you will explain the very reasoning itself, and then the whole discussion continues and sometimes goes for eternity. So this is how the system is, the Nyaya system is. And then as I said, we are all trained in this Western system of thinking. So here this was needed in the early India, where in the pre this Western logic system of India, this Nyaya was needed for people to train people to think in a certain way. So even though deductive or inductive didn't matter, so first help the student who has come to the Gurukula and train them to think. So even now, many places in Rishikesh, many ashrams in Rishikesh, Kashi, teach this Tarka Sangra. So the kids, the little kids, like kids of my age, 6-year-olds, 7-year-old, they by heart this whole text. So I think it has 70 verses, and then they by heart this whole thing, and then they are taught this. So this helps them initially, to think in a certain way and think very technically. So this is a very technical system of logic. And also, I am exposed to Vyakarana Shastra. So Vyakarana is a Sanskrit grammar. So Sanskrit grammar is more like mathematics. So where for everything you have a formula and you're just explaining the whole thing with sutras. So here instead of formula you use sutras. So we have Panini Ashtadhyayi Sutra Path. So this Panini Ashtadhyayi Sutra Path and this Nyaya Tarka Sangraha both are taught to kids, whoever goes to Guru. So they also go to formal schools, but they study this first. And that's how Vaidika kid is trained in this Eastern systems through Vyakarana and Tarka Sangraha, which sharpens the mind and thinking in a certain way, and exposing themselves to the ancient knowledge systems of India. So here I will just give you a brief in the first few verses. I'll just point out what they talk about. So verse 1, can you scroll down? So verse 1 is a prayer verse, so I'll just skip that. So verse 2 and 3 I'll just give an overview and we'll see. So verse 2 talks about dravyas. So dravyas and padarthas are talked about in this system. This is how they are introduced. So dravyas and the gunas, the qualities, are talked about in the second and third verse. So there are 9 dravyas talked about. So among these 9 dravyas there is earth, water, fire, air, and then space, time, direction, soul, mind, etc. So here these 9 dravyas are introduced. Dravyas are something which exists. So there are these 9 things which really exist. Here when I when I told you initially that these systems, these four systems, don't follow Veda completely. This is one clear example where they don't follow Veda completely. Because they have listed Atma. So you can see Atma, the soul, beside Manas, Atma. So this Atma is not a Dravya. So if someone who has understood Upanishads, who has studied Veda, who has some exposure to these Upanishads, so they know that Upanishad reveals Atma to be Parabrahma. So you might have heard this term, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. So Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. So Jiva jo hai, Jiva is not one among many. So this one among many is a dualistic philosophy. So for dualistic philosophy, I don't need a philosophy also. See, this dualism is there, is evident to me. So I don't need anyone to come and tell me that you are different, everything is different, and then everything is distinct from everything. We don't need a philosophy for that. So in our ancient, philosophies, we have dualistic philosophies. Even Bauddha Mata has two dualistic philosophies are there in Bauddha Mata also, and then in New Age we have this Madhva Sampradaya and then Ramanuja Sampradaya. So only the dualistic philosophies we have. And then earlier we have this Nyaya Vaisheshika also is a dualistic philosophy. So which includes Atma as one among men. Whereas Taittiriya Upanishad makes it very clear, Tasmad va etasmad Atmanaha Akasha Sambhutaha. Is that from Atma? The only real thing that everything has come about. Everything is an appearance of Atma. Atma Vidam Sarvam. There is a stand of Upanishad. So Upanishad cannot be negated by any individual philosopher or a philosophy. So what makes a philosopher stand out, or what makes an Acharya stand out, is how in keeping with Upanishad his idea is. So this is why Jagadguru Adi Shankaracharya is called a Jagadguru. Because people think there is a Shankara Matham, so this non-duality, Advaita. Shankara Matham is not Advaita. Advaita is revealed by the sacred Vedas. So this is what Vedavyasji in 4th Sutra of Brahma Sutra says, Tat tu Samanvayat. So the whole Veda is committed to reveal non-duality alone. So what makes Adi Shankaracharya stand out is he has no philosophy of his own. Whatever he is trying to establish is what Veda really establishes. Then the question could be, why does he even have to establish that? So because there are so many people who conclude whatever they conclude as opposed to Veda, even using the Vedic stamp and saying we are Vedic. So they conclude. So in order to point out, in order to call a spade, so this is where he has to write the comment, and this is what he says in the opening commentary of Bhagavad Gita. So here, this is where I am. So my job is also to give you a critical view about what it is. So this is what the second verse itself, where it talks about Atma. Atma is looked at as one among many, which is not so. So in third and fourth verse, it continues to talk about existence and non-existence, and it talks about a concept called Samavaya Sambandha. So Samavaya Sambandha is a totally imaginary concept, which I also have to point out as imaginary, because there is no such concept seen anywhere in Vedas. So Samavaya is that you see a wooden chair. So between the chair and wood, so a new concept has been created called Samavaya. So Samavaya is an inherent connection. But really, the whole wood, the whole chair is nothing but wood. When you say clay pot, so between pot and clay, there is no Samavaya. So this Samavaya is a problematic concept which is very much talked about in this Nyaya. And they also talk about a concept called Abhava. So Abhava means non-existence. So they have created categories of Abhava. So Prak Abhava, Pradvamsa Abhava, etc. So Prak Abhava is like this body. So this body before its birth was not there. That's a Prak Abhava. And this body after death is not going to be there. So that's a Pradvamsa Abhava. So this kind of Abhava also they have created categories of Abhava. And then Bhava is existence, Abhava is non-existence. Whereas the view of Upanishad, it's only that Upanishad alone is pramana with respect to understanding what existence is about and what Atma, what I am about. And Upanishad reveals that existence which is not an attribute, which is not coming in time. That's what Arjuna's problem is. Arjuna takes that everyone is now existent and they are going to die after this war. So this is where Bhagavan Krishna says, Nasato vidyate bhavaha, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubhayorapi drishtontaha tvanayos tattva darshini. So existence is not a quality which is coming in time and going in time. Existence is the only real thing which is even the existence of time, and that existence you are, tattvam asi. This is the whole teaching of Vedanta. So anyone who concludes anything else about existence, if it's not in keeping with, not in line with the Vedic vision, they are all negated in the commentaries of Adi Shankara Acharya. So this is where we have to point out that existence and non-existence are not two equally real things. So existence is there, non-existence also is there. And the opposite of existence is non-existence. But here Shruti says, Sadeva Somi Idamagri Asi Degamevadvitiyam. That what is there really is Sad alone. Even when everything is appearing it's Sad, even when it's not there it's Sad. All throughout what is there is that existence alone. And that existence, don't try to say, I want to experience that existence, I want to get that nirvana. So Shastra says, you are that existence, you, that consciousness is that existence, which is the very basis of everything. So therefore, Bhagavan Krishna concludes the teaching saying, you are free, Arjuna, now get up and fight. So this is a whole teaching about what is the reality of existence and what is the reality of myself, to which the entire Bhagavad Gita, which is a Vedanta text. So Bhagavad Gita is a Vedanta text. So Bhagavad Gita is having the commitment, what Veda is committed to, Bhagavad Gita is also committed to that. So this is the main pramana. This is the only way to understand what I am really about. And this Shastra, it is trained initially for kids to start, to help the kid think. Because the kid, typically in a Vedic society, 0 to 12 the kid would stay at home, and 12 to 24 the kid was sent to Gurukula. So 12 to 24, the kid was not asked, so in the interview and all, I think, were not there. So the kid was taught this kind of Tarka Sangraha and then Vyakarana and all that, and trained to think initially, even though it has its own flaws, but initially trained to think, and later, the kid enters into, Veda Patanam and then by hearting the entire Veda, and then some even progress to study Vedanta. So this is, I tried my best giving you an overview of this whole subject. Now I welcome questions. We can have a small question answer session. Just raise your hands and ask. So that shows you are at least following.
Sir, I read somewhere that try to sit
It's called Dayanand Saraswati, Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati. So he was he is a founder of Arya Samaj. So Arya Samaj is one such organization which promotes people to do Agnihotra Karma. So Agnihotra is a Vedic ritual. So they promote this Agnihotra Karma irrespective of which home you are born in, what's your caste and all that. They put everything aside and say just do Agnihotra Karma. Because there's an injunction of Veda that whole life of Vaidika should do Agnihotra Karma 2 times. It's a very simple ritual. So Vedic rituals are not so very intense. Nitya Karma especially. Nitya Karma is just offer two oblations. 2 times you have to offer this rice or whatever. So it's a very simple ritual which Arya Samaj encourages people to do that, and it's a very great thing that they are doing it. And then their philosophy, they have this kind of Traita philosophy. So Traita is, they say there are 3 things there. So it's a dualist philosophy. Just by that name we can understand. So it's a book by Arya Samaj. Anyone else? Anything? So I think. So thank you. Namaste.
Thank you so much for that enlightening session. I'd like to invite the registrar for the vote of thanks.
Good evening, Manadal. I'm Dr. Chakkilam, Executive Director, Dean Van Leeuwen Center for Peace Studies. It's an honor to be here. I'm very thankful to the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Damodaran Sanjeeva National University, Professor D. Prakash Garu, and the Honorable Registrar, sir. Thank you so much. So it's all your support and our vision. Professor Dean Van Leeuwen, he worked in American Navy, and then he understood that war is not the solution. He was born in Seattle, and from Seattle he came down to Nepal, and he learned Buddhism. He got into Buddhism, and he started something called Life Without Anger. And then he started learning about Vedanta. He established World Without Anger, and that's I incidentally met him during 2018, and that's how he became my guru, Dean Van Leeuwen, and he passed away during 2019 April. So EQ for Peace Worldwide, the headquarters is in California, and Professor Mac Pearlstein is the current president, and we have thought to do something on his name because of his love for both Western philosophy and also Eastern philosophy, and how he transformed himself through Eastern philosophy. So we wanted to focus more on Indian knowledge systems. So on his name, we started this Dean Van Leeuwen Center for Peace Studies, and we collaborated with Andhra University last year. And today, just an hour ago, we had an MOU with DSNLU, and we strongly believe that it's our honor, and we are gratefully thankful to the Vice Chancellor, Professor D. Prakash Garu, sir. Thank you so much for encouraging us. Thank you so much for supporting us. And you know, there's a lot to give. We have taken a lot, and now it's time for us to give. And because I've seen last time when I came to DSNLU, I've seen that your students are very competent, and they're very receiving, they're very proactive. So I believe that, you know, they'll be the right recipients of inner peace through IKS. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Good evening all. I thank Honorable Vice Chancellor sir for conducting a wonderful session on Nyaya with the presence of Acharya, Venkatesh, Chakkilam. And thank you sir for delivering very valuable insights, referring with Vedas, Upanishads and all. And they are very benefited with your lecture. I'm also thankful to Krishna Veera for collaborating with DSNLU and conducting MOA with DSNLU. I thank each and every present here. Thank you very much.